And welcome to another episode of the Decatur Dish. I am your host, Decaturish editor and founder Dan Wisenhunt, and we have a very special guest for you today. And when I say he is the one and only, I mean, in point of fact, he is the one and only, the only mayor Tucker has ever had, the first mayor Tucker has had, Mayor Frank Auman. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the invitation.
Mayor, let's go over some history. So Tucker was founded in 2015?
Yeah,
thereabouts?
November's election day coincides with the 10th anniversary of our referendum that approved the city, and then we actually incorporated it in March of 16.
And you were the first mayor elected in the city of Tucker. You were involved in the cityhood effort as well?
That's right. Spent 2-3 years working, advocating for a city, and then ended up the first mayor.
Real quick, what has been the advantage of being a city to the residents of Tucker?
Well, the whole philosophy to begin with was there were certain things we felt like we could do better for ourselves very locally than a bigger, more distant government could do for us, and so we formed a city that could do those things.
Tucker is coming up on 10 years, depending on how you count it. I know that you've got a lot of stuff planned. We got this Tucker Town Green that's going to be online this fall, and a lot of cities are doing this. You know, Avondale Estates is doing their own town green. What is the thought behind the town green, and what is that project going to bring to downtown Tucker?
It's a game changer of a project. So what we have that most cities don't is an authentic railroad town, streets and avenues, a little grid system down there. It's been populated with a lot of restaurants and good things for people to come to, but we've not had a signature downtown park. And that's what this Tucker Town Green will be, hopefully October or so this fall.
Project's on track, on budget, all of those good things?
Yeah, actually, I'd knock on wood if I could find some within reach, but yeah, on time, on budget, and we're excited to get to the finish line.
So I heard a rumor, a birdie told me that there's going to be a big announcement pertaining to the Tucker Town Green. I assume it's going to have pickleball courts, right?
No. However, downtown Tucker has been selected and recruited by the University of Georgia to be an official game watching party venue. And so we'll host 3 outdoor occasions where people can come and watch my Georgia Bulldogs beat up on Tennessee, Alabama, and Florida in that order.
I'm an Alabama fan, so I'm going to have to fact check you on the beating up on Alabama.
Come on.
Recent history indicates otherwise, but we'll stick a pin in that. The Tucker Town Green. So how are the watch parties going to work? Are you going to have like a big TV screen? How does that work?
Yeah, we actually invested in a giant outdoor screen to use at Fitzgerald Field for ball games, but also like we do Third Thursday movies during the summer, and we can move it around for events like this. So it's very exciting and be a great time for the community, which is the purpose of our park system.
Tucker has a fantastic park system. It has a lot of parks. It's a very, very green city. If you haven't checked all of that out, go check it out. There's a lot of great places to walk and enjoy the greenery in Tucker. Real quick, because I feel like pickleball has overwhelmed so much of the discussion in Tucker, but where are we with that project? It's been talked about for 2 years. There was a bid. That bid was withdrawn, or they decided not to bid the contract, and now that project's out for bid again. Where does that project currently stand?
That's kind of it. We have the plan was sort of modified through all that public input over the last year or two. In the end, we withdrew the bids that we had received, and now we've gone back to the market to say, all right, here's the plan. What do you charge us to build it and get all that in place so that we can then evaluate whether it's worth it and what it'll look like and all those things. So sometime September, October, we'll get those bids back and have something to talk about again.
Are you surprised by how much this has become a thing? How much it has dominated the public discussion in Tucker? Because I would go to meetings and I'd say, oh, there's this really neat agenda, and oh, it's about pickleball again. That's pretty much what every meeting is. It's like Groundhog's Day at the Tucker City Council meeting.
Yeah, we've managed to not talk about it for a little while, pending getting these bids back in again. That may tell the whole tale on its own, but depending on what it is, we'll sort of talk about how or whether or in what way to proceed.
course, costs have gone up for building things also. So there's that. It might be.
And that's why you go to bid. And that's, we don't have anything to talk about unless we have a plan and a cost associated with it. So that's where we're headed.
Let's talk about business development in Tucker. Tucker is a real interesting place. It's a little bit more spread out. I always tell people Tucker is like Decatur, but with parking. It's got a more spread out business district. You've got different key assets. What have you identified? I know we got downtown. We've talked a lot about that. What are some of the key business corridors and opportunity in the city of Tucker right now?
Well, one of our real strengths when we began was that we have a very balanced city, not only within the business community, but among residential and types of commercial industrial. So we have an industrial core. We happen to be the home of 2 different community improvement districts, which is a huge advantage. One of those is much more industrial distribution kinds of businesses. The other includes North Lake Mall, North Lake Festival, the sort of the very intense commercial sorts of properties. And so we've done strategic planning for downtown. We're about to renew that. We've done an economic development strategic plan to identify, industries that already exist that we can leverage from. So very robust planning and outreach effort for new businesses, but also keeping our current businesses happy and at home and successful.
For the uninitiated, what is a community improvement district? How does that work?
It's a district. There's a map that defines exactly who's in it and who's out. It only involves the commercial property owners, and basically they agree to tax themselves in addition to all the other taxes they pay. They pay a tax that the community improvement district gets to budget and operate from. And so they can do things like additional safety and beauty and various things to make their business districts attractive, get more people coming and staying and spending money.
I was at the Tucker City Council meeting, or I was watching it rather, the other night, where Den Webb is a zoning attorney. I've been covering stuff in Atlanta for a decade, and I've seen Den at all kinds of meetings. And he brought up, it was a real interesting conversation, because normally the way these things come about, it isn't, hey, we want to build a thing, and it almost felt like Den was kind of putting his finger in the air a little bit and trying to see which way the wind was blowing, what the council would think about doing some improvements at North Lake Mall. Were you surprised at that discussion and how that came about?
No, I don't think there's anything surprising there. In a situation like that, everybody's got their own, I'll say, agenda, not in a bad way. The city wants to see certain things happen. The property owner wants certain things. Developers want certain things. And so the process is all about coming together on something that works for everybody. And that's what we do. It takes a very long time, a frustratingly long time to make things happen. But I think, your sense was probably right. He was sort of checking our temperature on certain kinds of things, but in the end, they can apply to do what they want to do, and if it fits our regulations and we can come to some terms about what it's all going to look and feel like in the end, awesome. That's what we're here for.
I was not aware, and maybe I should have been aware, until that discussion, that the Macy's is not actually in the city. That line runs right through the mall. How did that happen?
Well, it's a very frustrating thing, but the mall was not in the city of Tucker to begin with when we became a city. They annexed themselves in with our blessings and gratitude and all the rest, but Macy's learned a lot about all of this. In the day when malls were being built, the big boxes on the ends owned their own footprint. And so that's the case with Macy's. They own the outline of their store and a bit of the parking lot. The guys who bought the mall did not buy Macy's. And so what they annexed in was the rest of the mall, and we're left with a city limits that runs across the front of Macy's storefront inside the mall.
Macy's isn't feeling Tuckerish. They don't want to annex into the city. Nobody's sent them a pie. Why is Macy's jumping on board with this?
Well, Macy's has kind of had a snoot full of their own problems over the last 6 or 8 years, and annexing in or not has not been top of mind for them. But we think we're getting there. They announced that store was closing, then they announced, no, it's going to be another year. There was a buyer that fell through. So there's a lot of action around there, but not necessarily things we can control as a city. We just want them to understand their lives would be better if they were all part of the same.
Let's talk big picture about that mall for a second, because North DeKalb Mall is going through a massive, massive project. It's going to transform that whole area. What do you envision something of that scale being done to North Lake Mall? And if not, what do you envision there? What would you like to see there?
It will end up in a big cohesive sort of development. It's on a different path than North DeKalb, Lula Hills now. So these guys bought it with some experience at doing a similar thing, where they had their own thoughts about how it would develop and what sort of tenants they would have. Unhappily, that began just before COVID. They came into the city in the years just before COVID. And so with changes in retail and the internet and that COVID brought and all of that, they've been through some fits and starts. But they've done this before, and they have an idea what they want to do, and so we're trying to be helpful.
Can we talk about drive-thrus for a second, as long as we're on the economic development topic?
Sure.
Tucker recently went through an exercise where they did a moratorium. It seemed at the time that the council was more or less on board with the concept. They came up with some new regulations. I won't get into the details, but you can read that on Decaturish.com. And it really curtailed the number of drive-thrus that you could have in the city. And Mayor, I think you were absent for this meeting, but there was, I forget who the mayor pro tem is all of a sudden, but she was running the meeting. I think it's Carol.
Yep.
She was running the meeting, and that came back, and the council didn't seem as hot about that. They seemed to be concerned that it was going to effectively outlaw a kind of business. I know you weren't there for that, but have you been caught up, and do you understand what some of the concerns were with the drive-through ordinance?
Yeah. So we have our process is that when we have an ordinance like that, we have a first read, a month in between, then we have a second read. And so there were as a result of the first read, there were some changes, some questions, some proposals. And when the second read came back, I think the council just had enough questions and lack of clarity about exactly what it would mean that they wanted to take another month and think through it. So yeah, it's a hard subject. All this zoning talk is a hard subject because we can't dictate it. We can just sort of massage it a little bit, try to push things here and there. So we don't want our downtown that I mentioned earlier to fill up with drive-through restaurants, but certainly there's a need and a market for them in certain places, and so we're just trying to do what we can to make them good, make them thrive, and be service to the community in the right places.
You talk about zoning. Refresh my memory. When Tucker became a city, didn't you just port over the zoning that DeKalb County had in place? Was that how it started?
Yeah, generally, starting from scratch, we adopted everything as it was under DeKalb. But yeah, we actually had zoning applications in midstream that DeKalb had begun, and once we became a city, that fell to us to pick it up and carry them through. So yeah, it was quite a complicated time to get started.
And is that largely still the body of ordinances that the council and city are working from, or have you written, what's changed about that since then?
Well, it's a lot of boring detail, but we've continually, since we began, been in the process of modifying the code to suit our own needs, and that was the point. Zoning is a really powerful tool to encourage the kinds of development you want, discourage others, so you won't find the kinds of massage parlors in Tucker that you find in other places. You won't find certain kinds of late night establishments in Tucker that you find in other places. We're trying to encourage things that the people of Tucker want and need and will frequent. And so, yeah, it's an ongoing process. We've done a lot of work on our zoning ordinances.
Mayor, the city of Decatur, and I hate to keep comparing y'all, but I know a lot about Decatur, went through this exercise, I think it was called a Unified Development Ordinance, where they took all of their code and they basically overhauled it and sort of streamlined it, and some parts of that worked really well. Other parts they're still tweaking. Has Tucker undergone anything like that since they've become a city?
Yeah, not by that name, but yeah, every in fact, at the meeting you're talking about, and our next meeting coming up, there's constantly text amendments and things, tweaking the code, accounting for new things that come about and old things. I think we're going to be eliminating videotape rental stores from our code.
That's right.
At the next meeting. So the world changes, code adapts with it. we do studies and take public input about desires of the community and try to work that into a code that brings it about.
Does Tucker even have any videotape rental stores anymore? I don't know of any.
I don't think so. I think there may be one in Metro Atlanta that operates as kind of a vintage place, but that's something that's gone by the boards.
Sad times. Got to watch it on Netflix now.
I do still have some VCR tapes, in my basement if anybody's interested on a secondary market.
Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate that. One thing I am interested in is talking about your legacy, because being the first of anything poses its own unique challenges. And Tucker, one of the things that always interested me about Tucker is term limits were kind of baked into the structure of the thing. You can't serve more than, I think, 2 consecutive terms. And I think you came in, I think you actually are serving 2 terms, but one of them is abbreviated. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're a bit unusual. So the mayor of Tucker is not so unusual in that we have 3 terms. A mayor can serve 3 terms.
Okay.
In my case, the first one was short because we had the special election when we got started. So I'm about to finish right at 10 years, but I'll be term limited at the end of this year. What's really unusual and I think detrimental to Tucker is we also have term limits on council members, and those are 2-term limits. So a council member can't serve more than 8 years in a row, and that's something that's hurt us, I think, over time.
In what way?
Well, one of the really big problems in public service right now is finding candidates, finding good people who are willing to serve and dedicate themselves to it. When you have them, you hate to lose them because the clock runs out. And it's one thing for the mayor to move on. I mean, 12 years is a pretty long time for somebody, but the institutional knowledge that you lose when your council members rotate so frequently, that hurts. It's a big loss. We're already without all of our original council members. When I go out, we'll be without all the original members of the whole council and mayor and everything. And there's something to be said for institutional memory, experience, knowledge of how things work. There are very, very few cities that have limits on their council members. And I actually worked to get that changed. It was also during COVID. People assumed that I wanted term limits lifted on the mayor, which was never something I proposed or advocated for, but for council members, it's a pretty big deal, and I'd like to see that change.
Mayor, if you were able to run again, would you?
No.
Yeah, you ready to move
But
on in life?
one of the great things about term limits is that it's a graceful way to not have to make that decision.
Are you planning to pursue public office in any capacity, or are you just going to spend time with the grandkids?
Now, the last time I answered this question, my wife and I still argue over what my answer was, but DeKalb votes 85% Democrat, including Tucker. Most people know, you've reported on it. I'm a lifelong Republican. I was chairman of the Republican Party in DeKalb County, and yet I've been elected 3 times because cityhood is a different thing. It really is nonpartisan when we keep it that way. The old saws about potholes don't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. All of those things are very, very true. And so I hope that part of what my legacy is that we've demonstrated how to make cities work, how to make a city work without entering into all the other headlines of the day that we're not authorized to deal with. We can't be effective at. And so there's some public service left for me to do, but not sure I'm electable on a partisan basis in DeKalb County.
Do you think they would name you chair of the DeKalb Republican Party again, or do you think that you're in alignment with where the base is?
That's not really my passion for the time being. I really love economic development. A lot of the kinds of things we've done in Tucker to increase quality of life. Those are the areas where if I could find a way to serve, I'd love to carry on.
Hear the DDA might be looking for some new members in the coming months. So
yeah, that's what I hear.
Let Lorraine Cochran Johnson know. I'm sure she'd be glad to have you. Mayor, we were glad to have you on our show today. Thank you so much, one, for joining us, but also for the years of public service you've put into Tucker. I know that is not an easy job, but you've handled yourself well, and we really appreciate it. So
you're very kind. I'm happy to serve.
This is the Decatur Dish Show. We will see you next week right here on Atlanta News First Plus. Have a great week, everyone. And that's the Decatur Dish Show. We tape every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. right here on Atlanta News First Plus. To check out episodes of this show, download the Atlanta News First app. To get all the latest news from DeKalb County, visit Decaturish.com. And to hear this show as a podcast, look for Decatur Dish wherever you stream your podcasts. See you next week.